Today's video, I want to talk to you guys about my 3 top tips for finding more sheds when you're out hunting this spring and winter. These are 3 methods and tactics that I've used over the years that are proven and have really increased the number of antlers that I'm able to pick up in a given season. These are tips and tactics that are going to apply in any shed hunting region. So that might be ag dominated, mixed ag, and of course big wood settings, and I'll talk about each one of those a little bit more in detail, but each region has the same principles behind what I'm going to talk about here today. The first tip that I want to talk to you guys about to find more sheds this spring is to locate the spot on the spot. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of spots out there that deer winter in, that deer are feeding in throughout the winter while they're dropping sheds, but to find more sheds, to pick up more of these antlers in a given outing and in a given season, we need to focus our efforts on those spots within the woods, those dialed in locations that are going to result in more antlers being dropped in those areas. And that might be in the food source, it might be in the actual bedding area. The reason that's important is because, let's face it, we don't have a lot of time. Some of you out there might be college students, high school students. Maybe you're married, maybe you're not, and you're working full-time or overtime, and so each one of us is in different stages of our life. But I know for myself included, I wish I always had more time to be out shed hunting. But the key here is that we're maximizing our time in the field, and we're putting that time to the best use that we can. So what do I mean by spot on the spot? These are spots that are what I consider blue chip locations. These are the spots that have the most deer in them. The way we find these spots are by getting out in the woods, scouting those crop fields now while the antlers are dropping. It's January when I'm recording this video, and wherever parts of the country you're in, antlers are going to drop at slightly different times, but the key is to get out there when you know they're dropping in that peak of the bell curve when those antlers come down. Some bucks are going to drop earlier, some bucks are going to drop later. But just like the peak breeding, it all operates on a bell curve with whitetails. So make sure you're getting out there while those antlers are dropping and locate those prime spots. So what do we want to look for? First off, we want to find those really hot food sources, of course. You know, in a mixed ag area, this is going to be a standing crop, a crop residue field, something that hasn't been turned over black. And, you know, maybe in the evening you see deer out there when you're driving by, and you see them out in the field, and this is a great indicator. You know, oftentimes crossing roadways, you'll see those beat down trails, those deer trails crossing the roadway. Those are indicators right there. You can start to put those pieces of the puzzle together. So the key is getting out there right now, and then once you're finding those spots, we're knocking on doors trying to get permission. Now for some of you out there, you might be lucky enough to own a lot of this land yourself, and that's really exciting. But for a lot of folks, it's our only option is to go out there and knock on doors, try to get permission from farmers. And look, a lot of farmers are going to be happy about the idea that maybe you could save them a tractor tire. And I bring that up when I'm out knocking on doors trying to get permission to go shed hunting in a farmer's field. I'm not afraid to bring that up and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I live over here, and I was wondering if you'd be okay with me looking for some deer antlers out in your field, and you never know, I might save you a tractor tire. And when I bring that up, they all kind of nod in agreement, and they're not cheap, and each year these antlers end up in tractor tires every year across the country. And so just a little tip there for getting permission. In ag dominated areas, these spots are going to be river bottoms, other strips of cover next to those active food sources. And of course in the big woods, these spots that I'm looking for are cedar swamps and pine plantations. The other places you can look are feeders, hay bales, silage areas, things like that. But the key is, it doesn't matter which type of food source you're locating, the key is just finding that hot food source. Once we have that hot food source, we need to try to dial that in to the spot on the spot. And that's kind of the whole point of my first tip here is going back to that. Let's say we have that example of woods over here and a crop field over here. That whole woods may have tracks in it and deer in it at some point, but within that woods you are going to find an area that has defined bedding and travel characteristics that exceed other parts of the woods. So you're going to know you're finding these spots when you're finding those parts of the woods that have far more droppings in them than other parts, far more beds, and far more trails. And you can circle those spots on a map, log them in your memory, make mental note of them. Same thing goes for the fields. So to find that spot on the spot in the field, figure out which side of the field they're entering on first, that crop field. Maybe it's standing beans, maybe it's standing corn or harvested. But you want to focus on that part of the field that the deer are entering from. And that's your spot on the spot. So you're not wasting a whole bunch of time out in that cornfield or that soybean field or whatever it is. You're not wasting your time in unproductive areas. You're focusing your efforts on those red hot locations, those spots on the spots. And that's something that I've started doing over the years, and it's really improved the number of antlers that I'm able to pick up. Because again, all of our time it's a limited resource, it's a finite thing, and so we need to maximize that time we have in the field. Now, if you're just out to go out and get some exercise and go for a walk, that's totally fine too. But in today's video, I want to talk about ways to actually boost numbers and improve the way you find sheds. And so finding that spot on the spot is really critical. The way I look at it is a number of mediocre spots don't make up for even one or two red hot spots or really prime blue chip spots. So when I go into my shed hunting season, I want to have a number of these spots lined up, these blue chip, these top end shed hunting spots that I've scouted out in the wintertime, I've gotten permission on if I need it, and then I've zeroed in that spot on the spot, and that's really where I'm focusing my efforts and my time, and I have enough of them lined up to keep me busy throughout the shed hunting season. Before we jump to my second tip, I do ask that you guys hit that like and subscribe button down below. I send out weekly whitetail hunting and shed hunting videos. It's free for you guys to subscribe, and that way you guys don't miss a video. Okay, so the second tip that I want to share with you guys is this. It's varying your walking pattern. You could also call it varying your grid pattern. When we get into these prime spots, so now we've located our blue chip shed hunting spots, the next thing we need to think about is how are we going to walk them? How are we going to make sure we're finding all the antlers that we can in these woods? And there's two areas that I want you guys to focus on. Number one, it's right in the food source. So again, that might be a crop field, might be hay bales, a feeder, things like that, but right in where those deer are feeding. And number two, I want you guys to focus on the bedding areas. And actually, the bedding area is the most important. So I didn't put those in order of importance. The most important spot to focus on is the bedding first, and then the food second, but they're both important. The trails connecting the bedding and the food are not as important. It's amazing how many times I have walked on absolutely beaten down trails, deer trails, between bedding and feeding, and I don't find any shed. For whatever reason, I have just found far more antlers in the bedding and in the food itself. So once we have our spots on the spots, we need to identify those, and we're going to tighten up our grid pattern in those. We're going to pull in the teeth of our comb, so to speak, as we comb the woods. So in a crop field, that's going to be, if it's soybeans, they harvested beans or corn, that's going to be picking X number of rows and walking back and forth up and down that field, that spot on the spot, in a grid pattern. And I'll actually count out the stubble rows and make sure that I do not miss a single row. And I'm looking to one side, walking down. I'll turn around and look the same direction, only in one direction, and come back and work it that way. You can do it that way with a partner. If you're going out shed hunting with some buddies, you can work that together in a snake pattern, go back and forth up and down that crop field. And I'm doing the same thing in the bedding area. Only difference in the bedding area, oftentimes it's just really thick cover, thick woods, thick river bottom. You don't have those machine planted rows to help you know exactly what you've covered and what you haven't, but in those cases you can use apps on your phone or your GPS that will show you a track log and show you where you've walked and where you haven't. So the second tip is really important because, again, it's getting back to that idea of focusing our efforts in those most productive spots. And those most productive spots in this order are going to be your bedding area and then the food. And so when I look at a farm, let's say, that I'm going to be shed hunting, I'm not just walking aimlessly, spending the same amount of time per acre over the entire farm. I might walk the whole farm, but I'm really cruising, I'm really covering ground in those mediocre areas, those less tracked up areas, and I'm slowing down, I'm dialing things back, and I'm really tightening up my grid search in that spot on the spot. Okay, now the third tip that I have for you guys to find more antlers this shed hunting season is to think about your timing. And there's kind of two parts to this. One part is private land or exclusive access, let's say, and then the other part is public land or where you're competing with someone else. In the case of where let's say you have, whether it's private land you own or have permission on, or maybe it's a family friend that only lets you shed hunt it, those are the best case scenarios as a shed hunter, especially if it's that blue chip, that premium spot on the spot type shed hunting location where those deer have been in there hard all winter. You know they've dropped some horns in there. In those cases, I'm saving those till the very end if I have exclusive access to them, or if me and my buddies do. We're gonna just save that towards the end, let all the antlers come down, and we're gonna do one milk run through there and pick up the vast majority of them. In the other cases where you have, let's say, public land, or maybe it's maybe it's private land, but it's a case where they let anybody shed hunt it. It's a farmer, he wants all the antlers off his field, and so anyone who asks him, he gives permission to. In those cases, it is important to get in there before other folks do. But I will just put a big caveat on this and say that we can't get so overeager in those cases that we're pushing deer out of those wintering grounds and into unsafe snow conditions. Some states actually have laws against this. They actually have defined shed hunting windows, when it's legal and when it's not legal. And so in those states, in a lot of cases that applies to elk and mule deer and other species, but in those states, a lot of other places, there are no laws. We just need to use our discretion and judgment as hunters. Oftentimes those animals are hanging by a thread, surviving by a thread. You think after a long rut, those bucks are exhausted, and especially in those northern climates where we have deep snow and extreme cold, those deer are essentially just living off their fat reserves at that point, and they're really just kind of clinging on throughout the winter, hoping to ride things out and hang on till spring. So we don't want to be busting into there, flushing those deer out into deep snow in January, February, March. In those deep snow conditions, I think of some of the northern states where this would really apply. I think in some of the mountain states it's the same case. So just use your discretion and think about that, and we want to be friends of the whitetail and respectful hunting community here, but in a lot of cases or a lot of areas you don't have that deep snow, you don't have that winter mortality. In a lot of parts of the country it's going to make a lot more sense to get in there earlier, try to be the first one in, and beat those other guys in, again, especially if it's public land. So use your judgment, and we'll take care of the resource that way. And so that timing is really important though, because in those handful of spots where you have maybe exclusive access or it's private land, it doesn't make sense in my mind to be in there spooking those deer out of those bedding areas and chasing them around if most of the antlers haven't come down yet. So think about that if you have spots like that. It makes more sense just to let them all come down. I know sometimes critters, environments will start chewing on them, so you maybe want to think about that. Don't wait too long, and at least in our area, the ticks get so bad if you wait too late. But I let most of the antlers come down in those situations, and then just make one thorough trip through there. When you guys are out there putting your plans together and you're out there in the field looking for those sheds, think about timing, think how that's going to play into the spots that you have, and order and prioritize those spots based on what makes the most sense timing wise. This is a match set right here. I found a big northern forest match set, just a bruiser buck, kind of a cool set of antlers, big hole in the horn right there. I hope you guys are going to get out and find some of these. I just love picking these sheds up, and I want to hear from you guys. Let me know what state you're in down below. Let me know what you're finding so far and what your plans are for this coming shed season. And hey, until next time, hey, good luck.